God created the world out of love, then why is it full of injustice, oppression, and suffering? The answer is, I have observed the misery of my people who are in Egypt. I have heard their cry and account of the takemasters. Indeed, I know their suffering, and I have come down to deliver them from the Egyptians. Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 to 8. God created the world as something good in itself. But man fell away from God, deciding against God's will and building evil into the world. The Bible tells about the story of the first sin and fall of Adam and Eve. Human beings, the story about the Tower of Babel, explains, wanted to be like God. Since then, there had been a flaw in the fabric of world, a detective principle. Since then, nothing is quite what God planned to be. Our presence decide also contribute to the fact that there is unjust oppression and suffering in the world. Many wrong decisions can sometimes unite into structures of evil and sin. The individual must therefore live within a system that on the whole is an evil and unjust, and it is not at all easy to distance oneself from it. For example, when a soldier is obliged to participate in an unjust war. Sin in the prison which we all are born. St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, says, sin is the prison in which we all are born. I do not understand my own action, for I do not do what I want, but I do the very thing I hate. Romans chapter 7, Catholic Church 4:15 says, although set by God in a state of rectitude, man, entered by the evil one, abused his freedom at the very start of history, but lived himself up against God and sought to attain the goal apart from God. So the next question. Was it part of God's plan for men to suffer and die? The answer is, God does not want men to suffer and die. God's original idea for men was paradise. God forever and peace between God and men and their environment, between men and women. Often we sense how life ought to be, how we ought to be, but in fact we do not live in peace with ourselves. Act out of fear and uncontrolled emotions, and have lost the original harmony that men had with the world and ultimately with God. In sacred scriptures, the explains of his alliance in expression in the story of fall. Before sin crept in, Adam and Eve had to live paradise, in which they were in harmony. Suffering, mortality, and the temptations to sin are signs of loss of paradise. St. John Chrysostom says, we have lost paradise but have received heaven, and therefore the gain is greater than the loss. St. Augustine says, O God, to turn away from you is to fall, to turn you is to stand up, to remain in you is to have your support. Human weakness cannot upset the plan of divine oppression. A divine master build can work even with falling stones. The next question. Original sin. What does the fall of Adam and Eve have to do with us? Sin is the strict sense implied guilt for which one is personally responsible. Therefore, the term original sin refers not to a personal sin, but rather to a disclosure, fallen state of mankind into which the individual is born. Even before he was himself, sin was a free decision. In talking about original sin, Pope Benedict XVI says that we must understand that we all carry within us a drop of poison of the way of thinking, illustrated by the image in the book of Genesis. The human being does not trust. Tempted by the serpent, he harbors the suspicion. The God is a rival for curtains our freedom, and that we will be fully human only when we have cast him aside. Man does not want to receive his existence and fullness of his life from God, and in doing so, he trusts is deceived rather than in truth, and thereby sink with his life into emptiness, into death. Thank you.